going inside the issues of our community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
To impose a 1% earnings tax when we feel that they need to use our tax money that they have now and use it wisely.
Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that people have the right to alter or abolish their forms of government. And the citizens of Amelia are simply taking that advice to heart and putting it into action.
Sparked by consideration of the adoption of a 1% earnings tax, as well as anger over the hiring of a village administrator and other issues, a group of citizens in the village of Amelia gathered signatures to place an option on the May 5th ballot that would allow the citizens of Amelia to dissolve the village. The result would be that what is currently incorporated inside the village would be split between Pierce and Batavia townships. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. The village of Amelia in Claremont County is home for little more than 3,500 people. The village has been incorporated since 1900. Over the last several years, tension in the community has been rising and has resulted in a group of citizens collecting enough signatures to place the option for dissolving the village on the May 5th ballot. If the village is dissolved, the property and the residents north of Main Street will become part of Batavia Township, while the property and residences from at the south of Main Street will be absorbed by Pierce Township. I invited representatives of both sides of this issue to come on the show and discuss the issues involved. After many emails and phone calls, I finally caught up with two of the leaders of the Dissolve Amelia effort, Debbie Schway and Pam Barker. Both declined to appear themselves and declined to identify anyone to represent the effort. Pam Barker said that the people involved are not political, I think she means not partisan, even though they have placed a serious question before the voters. And they are not public people. Although they maintain websites and write letters constantly to village officials. As a result, I am joined this morning only by the mayor, Leroy Ellington. Mr. Ellington was elected mayor in November 2007. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's begin with sort of a basic question. What is the function of Amelia? Villages in Ohio are incorporated areas of less than 5,000 people. Why do they need to exist? What does Amelia do?
Well, I'll tell you what. From my perspective, village government is exactly what my idea of what the founding fathers intended it to be. It is governed of the people and by the people. In a small town like the village of Amelia, a guy like me can take an interest in his community, run for mayor, be elected, and actually be involved. I have no political affiliations. I have no agenda other than to see my community thrive.
What services does the village of Amelia provide citizens right now? And because that's the way tax money is spent. What do you provide?
We provide a police department. We have 6 full-time police officers, 5 part-time police officers. We contract for fire and EMS service through neighboring Union Township, and they're a nationally accredited fire agency, one of 6 nationally accredited agencies in the state of Ohio. And we're very proud of that. We also provide public works services, road maintenance, snow plowing. We maintain cemeteries and parks, administrative staff. We have a mayor's court, clerk of courts. So those are the basic services.
Basic services.
Yes, sir.
If the village didn't exist, if it was dissolved, what would happen to those services?
Those services would continue to be provided by the neighboring townships, the townships that people would be dissolved into or absorbed into. And those people are professional providers of service. I have every level of confidence that Pierce Township and Batavia Township will be able to provide services at an adequate and professional level. However, within the village of Amelia, an area which is roughly 4 square miles, we feel as though our services are more intensive in that they're confined within that 4 square miles. Our police officers, for example, have what I would consider institutional knowledge of our community. We have 2 sergeants that have been sergeants there for 22 years. There's very little they don't know about the residents, their children, their grandchildren. It's a very much a community-oriented policing philosophy. We're trying to make that sense of community a more positive focus here than taxes and snow plowing, et cetera. We want to have a sense of community in the village of Amelia.
If the village of Amelia were dissolved and those services had to be picked up by these two townships, the townships would have to levy increased taxes, wouldn't they? Or would the property taxes of the value, would it all just sort of transfer and be even?
There's some discussion about that. There's some lack of clarity with regard to that. Yes, the division of services would be absorbed by the neighboring townships. As to exactly how it would be compensated for, I'm not sure. Neither Batavia Township or Pierce Township have been able to make a commitment one way or the other as to not they would levy for additional funds. Argument can be made that they will have to. On the Pierce Township side, they stand to absorb roughly 1,082 pieces of property. I don't know what that equates to in population, but they're going to provide fire, police, public works services to those people, and the money's got to come from somewhere.
Those two townships that would absorb the village, they're not the same township that provides the fire and EMS services now, right?
It's a third township.
Yeah. So would that contract disappear?
That's really a question for the lawyers. That's something that'll be litigated, I'm sure.
Well, a couple of questions, all of which are somewhat confusing. But one of the sparks for this, which I mentioned early on, was the proposition, and my understanding is it never went through, for council to levy a 1% earnings tax on the residents of the village, which would not have had to gone to the ballot. It would have been
Correct.
Something that, under state law, the village would have been allowed to adopt.
That's correct.
Am I correct that this is one of the sparks for this movement?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And where did that come from, and what's happened to that proposal?
When I took office as mayor in January 2008, it was presented to me that the administrator made a recommendation by way of a finance committee that was put together within the council. Their mission was to explore additional revenue ideas for what was projected as a shortfall in the general fund in somewhere around 2012. In an effort to try to prepare for that, that finance committee evaluated the situation, made the recommendation that the earnings tax be something that be considered further by village council. I took office and that became my very first focus. As a citizen, I was not happy with the idea that council can implement such a tax without a vote of the people. I wanted to make it a very public issue. We did that. We implemented a series of town hall meetings. Out of those town hall meetings, we met with resistance, but we also created what I called this Amelia Citizens Advisory Committee, who made a series of recommendations as to what they thought could be done in order to avoid the earnings tax. While their mission was twofold, it was first to determine whether or not we needed additional revenue, and secondly, how to obtain it, to make recommendations how to obtain it. It seemed as though they made their mission how to avoid the earnings tax. Their recommendations were inclusive of the following. They included the idea of eliminating streetlights and cutting police department. Statistically, those two do not speak well together, something that I was vocal about not being in favor of those recommendations. However, they did make some valid recommendations that have been implemented. The earnings tax is no longer on the table. In November of 2008, I made a recommendation to council that we table the issue based on the economy and the status, just the economy of our country at this time.
Do you think, though, that by 2012 the village is going to face deficit?
That's being reevaluated.
Are the lights still on?
Lights are still on, yeah.
Police still at the same force?
Police are still on there. Now, let me say this too, something that I've come to understand and have a change in heart in. I recognize the benefits of the earnings tax as being a long-range benefit to the village. The short term is a little bit more costly. I see the benefits of the earnings tax. However, I've come to understand through the course of this last 18 months that there's been a level of mistrust with regard to our council and government, and to some degree myself. I'd like to see that go away. I want to see people understand that this council and myself are acting with integrity. So my recommendation from this day forward to council would be that further need for revenue be addressed by way of voted levies. I believe that our residents, in an effort to rebuild that trust, I believe that our best method of doing that is pursuing it by way of voted levies so the residents know where their tax dollars are going.
Yeah, let me raise this. Pardon me. Let me raise this, though, and politically I understand why you back off of this, but this is allowed in the state law, and we're seeing other things like this in other places where what we do is we have representative government in this country. We elect people to make decisions, and what we're seeing more and more is people saying, let's take those powers away from representative government. Let's do a charter amendment so that the council can't do such and such. In your case, pass a 1% sales tax or pardon me, earnings tax. But in the city of Cincinnati, they can't even vote on a streetcar. Let's put it in the charter that they can't do things like this. This seems to me a very strange approach. I mean, if you had adopted the 1% earnings tax, would the citizenry have had any recourse at all?
They could have filed a referendum. Yes, it's referendable.
And then repeal it?
Yes.
Okay, after it's done.
Yeah, and what you say reminds me of something. When I was a kid, I would ask my mom, can I go swimming? She'd say, yes, but you can't get wet. It's the same scenario. As I ran for the office of mayor, it was part of my commitment to our residents that I would reconnect with the village. I felt as there was a division. Now, that reconnection has come at a cost, okay? Still today, I wanted to see more people in the seats at the council meetings. Mm-hmm. Still today, you can just about shoot a cannon through the council meeting, with the exception of those who are currently opposed to the village and want to dissolve the village. It's rare to see more than 5 or 6 people in a council meeting. And
we hear this from villages and actually larger cities as well. Does the village have, under Ohio government law, does the village have powers that a township would not? Would the residents of Amelia, if they became residents of townships, lose something that they can do now?
Yes. And this is something that, argument can be made that there's a better way or otherwise. Yes, they can. A village, for example, we have the ability, based on our form of government, to enact traffic laws, crime laws. We have the ability to have our own planning commission and be more involved in the planning of our community. Where the outlying townships, the 2 townships in question here, Pierce Township is a statutory township. They rely and are governed primarily by the statutes in the Ohio Revised Code, where Batavia Township is a home rule township, and they have some more flexibility. It's closer to being like a village government, but still with more restrictions. They don't have the ability to enact laws.
I'm aware of time, so I want to ask a question. Does the village of Amelia now, as this decision has to be made, does the village have a sizable debt that would have to be picked up by one or both of these 2 townships?
Only if the village is dissolved. What is being referred to as a $3.5 million debt is in reality nothing more than the cost of contracted services. And it's the cost of doing business. We're talking about a fire levy that a fire contract with
Union Township.
With Union Township, right. We're talking about that. That's a 10-year contract with 7 years left on it at roughly $335,000 annually. That comes up to a couple of $1 million right there. Okay, so most of what they refer to as debt could only really be described as debt if the village is dissolved. Otherwise, it's just a matter of doing business within the village. Also, the debt, as is described by them, is we have the funds to pay for by way of the levy, et cetera. Okay. We do have some real debt, roughly.
I'm sorry.
We do have some real debt, roughly $100,000 for a salt storage unit and roughly $19,000 in construction costs at our municipal building. But what is being described as debt, we have the funds to pay for. It's provided by levy money.
It's really just doing business?
It's the cost of doing business.
Okay. If you would like to read more about the Amelia situation, the movement to dissolve the village, you can check out the village's official website at ameliavillage.com, or the effort to dissolve the village at dissolveamelia.org, or the effort to save the village at keepamelia.org. So there's lots of information out there. Thank you very much for being here this morning. And stay tuned. After the break, a conversation with two doctors who will lead a $23 million grant to speed the translation of scientific discovery to the practical bedside. Welcome back. Several weeks ago, the University of Cincinnati and its partners received a $23 million grant from the National Institutes of Health. The purpose of this program is to speed the process by which discoveries and developments in the laboratory developed by scientists are transformed into applications that have significance at the bedside of patients. This award will support the work by the UC Center for Clinical and Translational Science and the Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. To help explore the significance of this grant, I'm joined by two of the principal investigators, Dr. James Heubi. Heubi, okay, who leads Cincinnati Children's and UC's Department of Pediatrics, and the Associate Dean of the Clinical and Translational Research, and Dr. Joel Tsevat.
Correct.
Okay, a professor of medicine and associate dean for clinical and translational research. Welcome to the Newsmakers. Translational research, this all sounds a little bit. Could you just sort of explain what this is really going to allow you to do at the Med Center and at Children's Hospital?
So let me start by saying what translational research is. Translational research has two major components, and even it could be expanded further. What we call T1 research is bringing discoveries from the bench to the bedside. T2 research is actually bringing bedside applications to the community. And the community and the population as a whole are really anxious for us to bring applications that will actually change their health. There's a third application that actually is a more global one, but we're actually focusing on the T1 and T2 aspects of translational research. What this means in general is that it brings money to bear to bring applications further to actually improve the health in our community and in the nation.
And would this, Dr. Tsevat, would this mean that it would only focus on scientific developments that have been developed here locally, or could you take something that has been developed in a laboratory around the world someplace and find out how to translate it either to the bedside or into the community?
No, we would be taking discoveries from wherever they come from, as long as they're sort of evidence-based. We'd want them implemented in the community. The second aspect, I think, of this second type of translational research is that we consider it to be bidirectional, meaning that not only are we trying to disseminate knowledge into the community, but we also want ideas for research from the community.
What would be an example? I mean, so when you say the community, who do you want to listen to? So there is this community aspect. So in that sense, we're all involved in this. This is taking place in Cincinnati. What would be an example of where the community would come forward with an idea?
Probably a really great example is some work that Joe Broderick has done in our Department of Neurology related to stroke. So that there's actually been an active ongoing program in stroke therapy within the community for a number of years, and he's enfranchised the community to bring to him issues that they think are relevant to his research. So he's actually gone out, talked with community members, and this is what we propose to do within this application, is go to the community, get input from the community to find out what they think is important in terms of research questions.
In that case, the community, would that be people who have suffered from strokes or relatives of people who have suffered from strokes?
In
or
his
would that
case,
be doctors? Who would that be?
In his case, it would be mostly people who've had strokes or family members. Some of the applications we would envision would be people who are from underrepresented groups within the population, African Americans, Hispanics, who have specific Appalachians, who have specific issues that actually should be brought to our attention because they have different needs than the majority populations, like Caucasians.
So with some of these minority groups, Appalachians, African Americans, Hispanic immigrants, other groups, is there an example that you can give me of something that's come forward that you could work on?
Well, we're actually developing a community partner council to involve these various contingencies. So community action agencies, various practitioners, researchers, and we're actually targeting, to begin with, 3 specific neighborhoods, Avondale, Price Hill, and Covington. And we're going to be going out to those communities and finding out what it is that they think we should be studying. We'll also be teaching them a little bit about research and trying to really get their input into clinical and translational research ideas.
Now, one of the things that just in the press release that catches people's attention, caught my attention, is $23 million. How do you, it's over 5 years, but how is, I can kind of, if it's in a laboratory, I know laboratories are very expensive to set up and the people you have to have working in those laboratories. Is this $23 million, is this something that's going to generate a lot of new jobs, or is this really the jobs are in place, it's a matter of allowing people to do the work they've been trying to do anyway? What are we talking about here?
It's probably a combination of both. There actually will be some new hires as part of this, but much of this will be faculty and staff who are performing other functions will actually do this work. We do anticipate, as I said, we do anticipate hiring some people. Now, the other issue is because we have this grant, we also have opportunities to apply for additional grants because we have this grant. And so we have an opportunity to potentially apply for up to about $6 million over a 2-year period as part of the stimulus package. And those will almost certainly generate additional jobs.
So let's be clear, this particular grant coming out of the NIH is not part of the stimulus package.
Correct.
This is something that is an NIH grant that they are looking for centers around the country. To have been chosen is quite an honor, as I understand it, that you have been selected to receive one of these grants. But that's an ongoing program. But on top of that, NIH has some stimulus money that you get access to.
That's correct. So the NIH has $10 billion driven into it as part of the stimulus package, but the CTSA, which we're part of, this parent grant, is only going to be available at 60 centers throughout the country. There currently are 39. We were number 39. And we were the only one funded in this cycle, so we were very pleased by that.
Wow, so this cycle, and this announcement was just made, so in 2009 you're the first one to be selected.
That's correct.
And this department, this translational research, my understanding is this whole program, it's now a special master's program, that this is an area of great deal of interest at the university and in the field generally. Is that right? This is sort of a new field that's really growing?
Right. We are trying to train the future generation of researchers. And so we're developing programs not only for physicians and fellows, but also medical residents and other health professionals, college students, and high school students. We're trying to get them interested in making this a career.
Now, is this only MDs who would end up working in a program like this, or could people with other backgrounds also have a role to play in this kind of work?
It's very much interdisciplinary. So we work with people from all over the university campus and outside the campus, PhDs, nurses, allied health personnel, pharmacists, engineers, people in the College of Business even. So. A big initiative, I think, of the CTSAs in general is to foster interdisciplinary research. So it's not just physicians.
So the 3 communities you're going to be working in, especially Avondale, Price Hill, and Covington, and people in those communities will be hearing about, you'll be reaching out and letting people know how to get involved?
Yes, sir, but I think it's more broadly, those are the focus neighborhoods we're looking at, but certainly it'll be an initiative across the metropolitan area.
Be really interesting to see what kind of results come out of this. And
well, I think there's some real issues obviously in each one of these neighborhoods, and there's been a big problem in Price Hill. Obviously Lower Price Hill's had big problems with lead, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
We just did a show on lead.
I know you did.
And so that would be an area?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. And Is there pure research out there that you think might be applicable if you can find a way to translate it to?
Well, certainly there's a lot already going on, and I think we will probably help with our infrastructure to support that activity.
Well, that'd be very interesting, especially as high profile as that is. Congratulations on this award. Good luck. And as time moves on and as you develop things, I certainly invite you back. And thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you. We do have a website, if I could
Okay,
mention
yes.
it. It's cctst.uc.edu.
cctst.uc.edu.
Okay.
.uc.edu. Thank you very much. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women shaping our community for the future. Have a good week.